Welcome to Guess the Year. I'm the host. My name's Mike. Today we've got 5 deadheads from around the country competing for a $50 gift card to REI and a spot in next week's show. Here's how the game works. We'll play the first part of a Grateful Dead live track, and each contestant will use the messaging system to silently guess which year their performance is from. Contestants, who are all on video chat to prevent any possibility of cheating, can submit their guesses at any time during the clip or in the 10 seconds after it concludes. Whoever is furthest from the correct year is eliminated. The last 2 deadheads standing will have a best of 3 series to determine a winner. We've got our 4-time returning champion Luke here with us, and we'll meet the rest of the deadheads in a moment, but first, let's hear the first song. Without further ado, The Grateful Dead.
Trouble all my life. Brought me out in the cold rain and snow. Rain and snow. Brought me out in the cold rain and snow.
All right, the guesses are in. It was Cold Rain and Snow at the Berkeley Community Theater on August 25th, 1972. Cold Rain and Snow is based on a song called Rain and Snow that originally appeared on a 1917 compilation called English Folk Songs from the Southern Appalachians. So we had 3 people guess 1971. It was Andrew, Luke, and Cooper. They all move on to the next round. Cooper, we'll start with you. You are 21 and you're from Deep River, Connecticut. What'd you hear there?
I was like honed in on Bob's tone, which is making me think like, I don't know, remind me of Europe 72. But then I went 71 because I didn't really hear any Keith at all. So I'm sure he was there. I just wasn't picking up on it. And then when I heard Phil come in for like the Cold Rain and Snow part, I was like, okay, good. I'm grounded in like the early 70s because he really didn't do that after like 73, I think. So that's what I was hearing.
And Cooper, you were telling us before that you go to UConn and you started a Grateful Dead fan club there.
Yeah. So it's just, I'm like a second generation Deadhead. Both my parents started seeing shows in like 84. So always grew up with the music. And then it was like 2-3 years ago, got into it on my own. And then when I got to UConn, I met a buddy of mine. We started like going to see local tribute shows and then started throwing up flyers. We got like maybe like 25, 30 people on the email list. We're going to see some stuff on Sunday down in Mystic. So yeah, it's just great. I was happy to see that there are other people. It's not just people wearing t-shirts, there are other people around. So
you guys go to shows. What else do you guys do?
Yeah, I mean, it's not, doesn't have like, registered student organization like status or anything like that. It just didn't seem to make sense. So we just kind of gather at my place and throw on some Dead and hang out at the bonfire. I play bass, so people have brought instruments over and just had like a sort of impromptu jam type of thing. It's really just more been like a collection of people getting together more than anything else. But there's a really good tribute band by us, and I'm trying to get more exposure for them. So,
what's the tribute band?
That's Mystic Dead, and they're outstanding. And they play all around our part of Connecticut, but I believe they're going to expand to like more like New York area in the future. But I'm really excited because they just great variation in the set lists. Like they don't stick to any era. Like the last show I was at, they had Golden Road, but also Built to Last. So they're like all over the place. It's great.
Built to Last is a rare cover band jam. That's really dope.
I love that song, man. Yeah, it was awesome.
Cool. Well, welcome.
Yeah.
Cooper, you're on the next round.
Sweet.
Andrew, you also guessed 1971. You're also on to the next round. Anything you want to add to Cooper's analysis there?
not really to add. He said several things that I heard and didn't hear. I actually didn't really hear keyboards at all. So, sometimes Keith could be low in the mix, and I just figured, all right, well, Pigpen's not there. And then Phil singing on the chorus, which, as Cooper mentioned, didn't really happen much after 72, 73, perhaps. So, yeah. And I'm also going to give a Connecticut shout out. I'm actually from Connecticut. And
yeah, that's right.
That's right. I actually know where Deep River is, and I went to UConn.
No way. Where are you from, Andrew?
West Hartford.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. That's great.
So,
Andrew is currently. I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce you. You are 52, and you're in Portland, Oregon.
Yep.
So, how did you get into the Dead?
I knew people in, I guess, maybe like early middle school who either were listening because they had older siblings who were into the band, or just from some other way. So I had friends who started listening to the Dead, and I started listening to things like the albums, Skeletons from the Closet, probably Terrapin Station, Shakedown Street, and American Beauty, and just kind of went from there.
And how did you end up moving on to the live tracks?
I saw the band a bit. Saw them in Hartford actually in '88, which have been widely reviled as terrible sounding shows. The music's not too bad, but Garcia's voice is just shot all 3 nights. I didn't care. They were my first Dead shows. It was hometown. I had friends from high school I went with. It was just fun. And I don't recall if, in fact, at that point, I must have had some live shows on tape, but not very many. Actually, at UConn, I got a ton more. That's really where my collection started to grow initially.
So when Jerry sounded like crap, I've always kind of wondered, did the audience say like, man, Jerry sounds like shit? Or was it just no one really talked about it, just whatever?
Me and my friends, we were all new live show attendees. And I think we were just psyched to be there. I don't doubt that somewhere in the crowd, there were people who were just like, man, Garcia sounds like crap tonight. Since 10 or 15 years, there were people there who I'm sure saw Hartford 77, outdoor shows in 74. So yeah, I'm sure there were some people who were quietly grumbling amongst themselves.
Yeah, or even it could be. Sorry, Cooper.
I'm sorry. My dad was at one of those shows in '88, and he has a story about like one of the Black Peters where like Jerry was just croaking through it. Brutal. And kicks over the stand. I think you can hear it in the recording. Kicks over his mic stand and just rips it at the end. It's so funny. That's awesome that you were there.
Yeah. I mean, what I've heard a little bit, and I've read more about people saying that when specifically Garcia wasn't feeling well, like his voice wasn't working well, he would kind of up his picking on the guitar. So those shows sound bad vocally, but the playing is extra hot.
That's awesome. Big agree.
Luke is our returning champion. He's 31. He's from Elliott, Maine. You guessed 1971. You're also on in the next round. We actually got an email question for you this week. Jay Guts. Yeah, Jay Guts. He DM'd me on Instagram, and he wants to... he dubbed you King Luke, by the way. Pretty dope. And he wants to know what you do after a show. So like you sit, you listen to a show, it ends. How do you kind of move on with your night? Like, what do you do next?
Yeah, you just listen to another show. I'm a real sicko, Yeah, I mean, yeah, or maybe, listen to a Fish show or like some like Really, I would actually say my main transition, actually, I'll take that all back, is definitely just putting like on some jazz after listening to a Dead show in a silent way, like Miles Davis or like Live Evil or something like that. Even more psychedelic and far out than the Dead, really.
So you like it because of the contrast?
I mean, to me, it's like kind of back to when I was talking about how like I'm like my favorite parts of the Dead are like the jamming and improv and whatnot. And to me, it's like a similar mindset just going and listening to some Miles Davis after listening to some Grateful Dead. It's a similar exploratory zone of jamming, and it just has a different like tonal quality and texture. So it like sounds good to the ears after.
So it's not even like a cool down. You're just like more like.
I love improvisational music. Yeah, that's why I love the Grateful Dead and like love bands that do stuff like this. The improv is my main. You know, the great songs of the Grateful Dead are what drew me in, and they're the greatest songs ever, and you know, by the greatest band ever. But the improv is what keeps me listening after all these years, and what keeps me wanting to find more shows to listen to.
What's an example of a band you would go see live that does not improvise, or is there one?
I was gonna say like Cass McCombs is really good, but even he does a little bit of jamming with his band. I mean, I don't know. I've seen a lot of bands over the years. It's hard for me to even begin. I mean, I've seen like hardcore bands.
But like now though, I'm wondering, now that you're, fully into this improvisational phase.
Yeah, that I need that looseness to music I listen to. I need it to be rough around the edges. Bobby needs to be there, Trey needs to be there for really me to get out of the house. Phil, of course. I'll take Mickey with the beam. I'll drive hours for just to watch Mickey hit the beam.
Love it. Well,
that even answer the question, I guess?
Oh, totally did.
Okay,
totally did. Well. Jay Guts, thank you for asking and he sounded like a nice note about support for the show and
yeah, that's
his
cool.
Fanship of you, Luke. So there you go. All right. Well, joining Luke in the next round is Debbie, who is 47 and she's from Chicago. Debbie gets 1970. Debbie, why 1970?
I knew it was early. I was teetering between 70, 71. I didn't hear keyboards. It sounded a little rougher. So that's why I hesitated with 72. So I just knew it was early cold rain and snow.
Great. And how'd you get into the Dead?
Actually, I was a camp counselor at a music camp when I was in high school. And one day we were sweeping the band shell and, someone popped on St. Stephen and I said, what is that? And that's it. I just kind of got into the Dead. I was listening to a lot of Led Zeppelin and classic rock and a lot of reggae. So there was a little bit of everything for me.
So you listen to St. Stephen, and then where do you go from there?
American Beauty, I think I didn't start listening to live shows maybe until about 2 years in. I had a boss at a restaurant I worked at in the summer, and he gave me some tapes, and that kind of started that, like in, I think I was 93, 94. And then I didn't go to my first show till 95. So, but.
Hey, you saw him. Were you at that Soldier Field show or something?
I was at the second to the last. I was going to go to the July 9th, but I had like an orientation for college thing. So I missed the last show, but I did go to 78, 95.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
How did you, you'd been listening to tapes for some time. How did you feel like they sounded in 95? Because I know there's differing opinions.
Well, at the time I thought it was great, now, I don't really listen to tapes anymore. I mostly listen to the re-listen app on my phone. I don't know. I kind of am always drawn to the 70s shows. I try and mix it up, but I just keep going back, to early 70s or late 70s.
Great. Well, Debbie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Hawk is 50 and he's from Ojai, California. And Hawk, you guessed 1969. You're unfortunately eliminated. I'm so sorry. What'd you hear that made you think 69?
Honestly, I wasn't thinking straight. I kind of choked. Just kind of got frazzled with my computer shutting off at the beginning there. And then I had food poisoning this morning. I was in the hospital and I just woke up at 5:45 and I feel like death. And I don't know. I sort of could tell it was between like 69 and 72. And I should have kind of gone more towards the middle of those years. And I didn't know what to guess. So I just put that.
Well, we've had some good excuses for much bigger gaps than 2 years, but I will say being in the hospital and also your computer not working is pretty legit.
Yeah.
You're doing okay now?
I mean, I'm all clammy and sweaty and I feel like crap, just super weak, tired. And yeah, like I said, I slept all day because I didn't sleep all night. And then I came home at 6 a.m. and basically slept on and off at 45 when my alarm went off. I'm glad I set my alarm, but.
Well, thank you for toughing it out. You did not have to do that, but really nice of you. Can you tell us your Deadhead origin story? Then we'll let you go back to bed.
Yeah, sure. A friend of mine, when we were young, this was 93. He went to a concert, some band we had never heard of before, and we're hanging out by his house waiting for him to get home at night. He just runs by us. He's like, I don't have time to talk. I'm going on tour. And I'm like, what? And he just finally comes back out, and me and my friends were like, what's he talking about, going on tour? Or like, maybe he has a job as a roadie or something, because we didn't know that was a thing, you know. Didn't know of the Grateful Dead, so didn't know people just got up and went on tour and saw multiple shows. I was just used to your normal classic rock, you know. And yeah, he comes back out of the house. He's like, I don't have time. My friends are waiting for me. I'm going on tour. And it was like, yeah, so he just saw one show and decided to do the rest of the tour. And yeah, he always called me. He's like, you got to see this band. You got to see them. You're going to love them. You're going to love them. And sure enough, yeah, he brought a bootleg home from the tour, and I got into it. Didn't end up seeing him until the summer of '94, but Buckeye Lake, actually, my first show. But I was definitely hooked immediately.
So you just listened to a lot of tapes from that point on then?
Yeah, back then, I didn't know. I only knew a couple Deadheads, and really only one of them had a lot of cassettes. So, and at first he wouldn't share them at all because, people lose them. Some people aren't responsible. And he finally would start lending me one at a time, and then I'd have it for like a week. I'd record it, bring it back. And so I was only able to collect one every couple weeks for a long time. And then I started meeting other Deadheads after a couple years, and then I ended up with a cassette box of, I think around 100 bootlegs until I discovered digital, 15 years ago or whatever. Started downloading stuff.
Well, Hawk, thank you for playing, and thanks for being here despite being in hospital hours earlier. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, feel better, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks again, Hawk. And Luke, Cooper, Andrew, and Debbie are on to the next round. Let's play the song. All right, the guesses are in. Kyle sent in that one. It was Satisfaction at RFK Stadium in Washington, D.C. on July 7th, 1986. This was the last show before Jerry fell into a diabetic coma on July 10th. Andrew and Cooper were closest. They both guessed 1985. They're both on to the next round. Andrew, what'd you hear there?
Jerry's guitar tone. That just screamed 1980. Very solid mid 80s, and I was really leaning to 85. It's kind of all I can say about it.
Cooper, you hear the same thing?
Yeah, it's something I noticed with a lot of like the mid 80s shows. It's like, I don't know what the right adjective is for Jerry's tone, but it's like looser than like 87 like to 90s. So that's what I heard. Phil was dropping bombs. I don't know if you guys heard that too. It was awesome. But on top of that, I'm trying to think. That was pretty much it. Phil's tone is also kind of like, it's kind of gainy, which I think is like kind of like, I hear that like 83 to 87. So that was kind of what gave it away. So off by a year, but close enough.
Luke, you guessed 1981. You're also on to the next round. What'd you hear there?
I know they started doing that tune as like an encore, I think, in 81. So I was just like, it must be in 81. But definitely has that big, RFK Stadium, football stadium sound. Definitely sounds like an 86. Obviously it is. And really it just threw me off. It's hard with the Bobby songs.
Yeah, it's a little early in the game for a mid-80s Bobby song. I could have kept that one for the finals. Debbie, you guessed 1993. I'm sorry, you're eliminated.
That threw me. That really threw me. I thought it sounded like big stadium. Bob's voice sounded weird to me. I wasn't really paying attention to tone. I don't know. That threw me off.
Yeah, well, Debbie, thank you so much for
Thank
playing.
you. Thanks.
Yeah, really, really great to have you on. And Cooper, Andrew, and Luke are on to the next round, vying for 2 spots in the best of 3 series final. Let's play the next song.
All years combined, they melted to a dream. A broken angel sing from a guitar. In the end, there's just a song. It's crying up the night. Through all the broken dreams and vanished years. Stella Blue.
All right. Stella Blue. On November 4th, 1977, at Colgate University in New York. Stella Blue was first performed on June 17th, 1972 at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles, which was also Pigpen's final show with the band. Andrew, you guessed 1977 exactly. You're on to the finals. What'd you hear there?
I've had that show forever. And there were some things about the intro to the Stella Blue that are kind of unique. Jerry's voice, Keith playing the electric piano. And I was just like, yeah, I think I know this is the Colgate show, in fact, just because I've had the tape forever and I've heard this song a lot.
So was it the length of the intro that helped you identify it?
No, it's not the length. It's sort of the way Garcia's playing around the melody. I don't have like a elaborate musical vocabulary. It's just, it's just how Jerry's teasing around the beginning of the song. It just sounds different than so many other Stella Blues.
All right, you're on to the finals, Andrew. All right. It had to happen eventually.
I knew it.
Cooper guessed 76. Luke, you guessed 74. 1 second, Cooper. Luke, you did an amazing job. The run has come to the end. What do you have to say?
It's been a great run. You have freed me.
Your holidays are now wide open. You can celebrate with your family. Yeah, congratulations, man. You've, standing ovation. What about that kind of, whatever, you weren't that far off, but what'd you hear there?
I was going to say 76 at first myself. And then I just sounded like one drummer to me. I thought it was just, Billy just digging in there. So, I was thinking maybe it was a 74 rendition of the tune. Beautiful jammed out intro. I need to listen to that one a little bit more. That's really nice.
Yeah, it was relaxing, just so soothing and ethereal.
That's sick. Love it. Andrew and Cooper, best of luck to you guys. I can't wait. I'm going to listen to it. I'll see what happens. That's awesome. Debbie, wonderful playing with you as well. Great job. Loved everything you had to say. And Mike, it's been real, man.
Luke, we'll be in touch. Okay, Cooper, we didn't get your response. So you guessed 76.
Yeah.
So you got it basically. Why 76?
I also shared Luke's trouble with the drummers because I really couldn't tell. But my main thing that brought it from early 70s to later 70s is I feel like Keith's playing post hiatus is more it's blockier, if that makes sense. I'm not a keyboard player, but early 70s is very intricate and it's a little bit simpler, and the late 70s it's still beautiful. And then I think Andrew said that too, is I think in the later 70s he had the electric grand piano that he was doing in addition to the regular grand piano. So I heard that. But that was just a beautiful rendition. That was what clued me in.
Great breakdown. Thank you. Andrew and Cooper, you guys are on to the finals. So it's a best of 3 series. Let's play the first song.
Chill to the wind
All right, the guesses are in. It was Scarlet Begonias at the Warfield on October 10th, 1980. The lyric, "Everybody's Playing in the Heart of Gold Band," was used by Keith and Donna Godshaw to name their new group Heart of Gold Band after leaving the Dead in 1979. Cooper, you guessed 1979. You were closer, as Andrew guessed 1983. How'd you diagnose that one?
It sounded like early Brent because he's like sort of he's kind of more reserved, like he's like relying heavily on the organ, which I love. It was that, and then Bob's guitar kind of sounded like a little bit like it did at the tail end of the 70s. So that's why I went for 79, because I wasn't sure if it was 80, but it definitely sounded like early Brent. I was hoping you were going to keep the when they go into the "If I Had Never Been Right" part, because that would have given it away with the Brent. But that was what I was thinking through that.
Andrew, you guessed 1983, not too far off. Why 83?
So it was clearly a Brent era show, clearly earlier Brent, because it was, to me, it sounded clearly pre-coma, because Garcia's voice sounded young still. And I was wavering on 1981, and I just kind of decided I'm going to stick with 83 because it sounded like a couple of other Scarlets from 83 that I'm more familiar with. And I just figured, all right, well, it's another one from that year.
Great. Well, Cooper needs one more to win. Andrew needs one more to tie and keep the game going. Let's play the next song.
Busted flat, bath version, waiting for a train. Really nearly faded is my jeans. Bobby flagged a diesel down it just before it rained. Took us all the way to New Orleans. I took my harpoon out of my dirty red bandana. I was blowing sand while Bobby sang the blues. Weaving windshield wipers, slapping timing, Bobby clapping hands. We find the same. You ever saw that driving near? Feeling's just another word for nothing left to do. Nothing ain't worth nothing, but it's free. Feeling good was easy, Lord, when Bobby sang the blues. Feeling good was good enough for me. Good enough for me, Bobby McGee.
All right, the guesses are in. Me and Bobby McGee was at the Selland Arena in Fresno, California on July 19th, 1974. The Chris Christopherson cover was first played live in 1970 and played 100 times through October 74. It was played 3 more times in 81 and then dropped for good. Cooper and Andrew both guessed 1973. No one gets a point. Andrew, we'll start with you. What'd you hear?
So I was initially leaning at 1971, but then I heard piano, and the tone of Phil's bass has this really, I think of it as like a really round sound, and I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else, but I knew he didn't sound like that in 1971. And I figured it was 73 or 74, and I thought I would sort of hedge my bet and go 73.
Cooper, you were nodding at Andrew's characterization of a round sound on Phil's bass.
Yeah, I just think that was a good word for it because it's so hard to like characterize those things. And that for me is like that might be the best that it gets for Phil Tone, like on Eyes of the World and stuff like that from the early 70s. But that was the same thing that was guiding me as to when it was from. But I just thought that it was like a little bit like dustier sounding than like sometimes you hear the 74 stuff and it's so jazzy, it's so clean. And it has to do with obviously with how they recorded it. But that's why I went 73 because I felt like it was a little bit in between. But I think Andrew had it spot on with what he said.
Great. Well, let's play the next song.
Somewhere out of here, gonna choke to the feet. There's too much confusion here and I can't get over. Businessmen, they drink my wine, while they dig my earth. Gonna get along the line, nobody out here did his work. No reason to get excited. Leafy kind of spoke. There are many here among us who feel that life is but a joke. But you and I, we didn't do that. This is not our fate. Let us not done falsely now. The hour is getting late.
All right, the guesses are in. It was All Along the Watchtower at U.S. Air Arena in Washington, D.C. on October 10th, 1994. The song was on Bob Dylan's classic album, John Wesley Harding, which he released in 1967. He made the album in under 6 weeks while recuperating from a motorcycle accident. Cooper, you guessed 1992. You were closer. You're our new champ. The 90s are tricky. You got real close. Congratulations. What'd you hear?
Very tricky. I don't know. I feel like the 90s are the hardest to judge of all the decades. Bob's voice is not a good indicator of years, really, because he's like the most consistent sounding. I don't know. I was trying to figure out whether there were two keyboards or not, and then I realized it was just Vince. But I really couldn't tell first half of the 90s, second half of the 90s, because I don't typically think of 94 as sounding that good. And that sounded pretty damn good to me. So I just went for 92 because it was like a midpoint.
Playing the game. Andrew, great run. Why 88?
So I thought I was hearing Brent here and there. And then at the very end, I was like, uh-oh, wait a minute. Could that be Vince? But it didn't change my mind. I honestly don't recall if Vince ever did backing vocals on Watchtower at any point. And the song didn't seem as sort of jammed out rock and roll as the song was for a stretch. And so I thought, oh, it's earlier in its performance history with the band after the Dylan and Dead tour. And they just haven't gotten to the point of like, we're becoming rock star during the tune. Because he just decided he hadn't worked up to that for that yet. And I figured, all right, it's earlier in its repertoire. And I was leaning to 87. And then I thought, bring it up another year. That way, if it's 89 by chance, I've got a little more coverage. That little keyboard bit at the very end, I was just like, oh God, is that Vince? And then I was just like, I wouldn't even know what to guess as far as the 90s, because I don't listen to it much, though I did see many shows in the era. Yeah.
What was the best show you saw in the 90s?
I saw a lot of Summer of 91. And I would say that actually the Chicago Summer Solstice show of 91 is the highlight of that entire tour. If I recall correctly, they played a monstrous shakedown to open the show. I think something like 16 or 17 minutes, perhaps. But second set's where it's at. They do, God, did Foolish Heart open the second set? I want to say it was something like Foolish playing.
Here, what was the date again? I'm sorry, I'll look it up.
6/22/91. Coldest summer solstice I ever experienced. Seriously, it was really crazy windy. It was cold. I was like, this is summer in Chicago. What are people doing living here?
Yeah, I've lived in Chicago, and the summer it always comes later than you'd expect. June, it's liable to, hail. So yes, Foolish Heart started the second set. You're completely right.
Foolish playing crazy terrapin into drums.
Yep.
Yeah, the terrapin has a tremendous outro jam, and although the Dead brought Dark Star Jam back at Giant Stadium, those are nothing compared to the full-fledged Dark Star Jam that comes out of space. It's about 7 or 8 minutes. There's no vocals, but it's so clearly a full-on Dark Star as opposed to the teasing around the edges they did at Giant Stadium.
Yeah, I see on the set list here it's listed as jam, which I've never seen before. Just pure, either just like first verse, second verse, but just jam here. Wow.
That's how you know it's good.
Listen to the whole show, and then after the show, after the encore, there were probably about 10 minutes of fireworks over the stadium that were obviously put on by the production. It was fantastic.
What a cool show. Yeah. So it started with Hell in a Bucket and went into Shakedown Street.
Okay.
And then it went into Wang Dang Doodle, Friend of the Devil, When I Pay My Masterpiece, Brown Eyed Woman, and Let It Grow.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And you remember it clearly. I mean, you remember the whole second set in order. That's crazy.
I really love that recording and show. There's great soundboards out there.
Cool. Well, Andrew, it was a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for doing it.
Thanks for the opportunity. This was totally fun. Congratulations, Cooper. Good ears.
Thank you, Andrew. Great hearing from you, man.
Well, Cooper, congratulations. You are only the 4th champion in the history of Guess the Years. Congrats.
Thanks.
We hope to have you on next week to defend your title.
Absolutely. For sure.
Awesome. All right. Subscribe to Guess the Year on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. For show updates, follow us at Guess the Year Show on Instagram. And if you want to be a contestant, sponsor the show, or make comments and ask questions, email us at guesstheyearshow@gmail.com. For the fun facts today, I relied heavily on Dead.net, Dead Disc, Grateful Dead of the Day, and their commenters. Thank you. Big thanks to the amazing tapers whose recordings made this show possible. Congratulations to our new champion, Cooper. And to our other contestants, thanks so much for playing. And remember, it's all one song anyways.
Good night. Good night.